And good evening, and welcome once again to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And tonight, it's Monday night, so it's Labor Day, and it is actually before midnight right now, so it's still Monday, and it's still Labor Day, but it's also still time for new comics, bitches! Let's kick it off. Alright, so, the first book that I'm going to talk about this week is going to be, we're going to start with Marvel, as we normally do, and we're going to start with Ultimate X-Men number 15. Basically what we have here is that, basically, the war has started. First blood has been shed, and that blood, of course, goes to, well, technically the militia, since they were the first ones that put two in Jimmy Hudson's head. But of course, he, like his father, this is where I'm still a little confused. Is that I don't know if Jimmy Hudson is like Kid Wolverine, if he actually shares some common DNA, or if he's his father or what. But I guess it doesn't really matter because he springs back up from the dead and immediately goes kind of berserker on the people that shot him, that were willing to shoot all of them. Bobby also does some damage as well, although not to the extent that that Jimmy does, certainly. And basically, all of these events in the diner, as we saw from the last issue, they culminate in Kitty's real understanding that this is no longer just this isn't just theory. This isn't just an idea. It is real. It is visceral, and it's war. It's a declaration of war against those who would not only just persecute mutants, but who would openly assault, hurt, and kill them. And it really, of course, takes the actions in the diner to fully kind of drive that point home. So once that situation has been more or less dealt with, they begin, moving a little bit further down the line. Everybody's just, of course, their spirits are really broken, and so on and so forth. And they just do whatever they can to kind of hold on to that one part of them that makes them a coherent team. And there's maybe some little power plays that are going on because, Rogue, because hearing, of course, in the aftermath of the last issue, where we kind of found out what happened to Johnny and Nomi and the rest of the mutants that were left in the Morlock tunnels. These are essentially Rogue wants to turn back, but then, of course, it's put up to a vote, and majority rules, and they press on forward, further into the Southwest. And as they do so, Kitty is actually carrying weapons. She's got a machine gun on her back and a pistol in her on her hip. Basically, because she has the most kind of passive defensive powers, and she even talks of the gun itself being a symbol that this has escalated. This has gone way out of her league. It's way out of her control now as far as where they are in their journey. But it's basically that it's come down to, it's war, and maybe it's time for one. Not that that's so explicitly said, but that's kind of the point that I get out of what Kitty's kind of inner monologue is talking about. And along the way, they meet another mutant who happens to be Paige Guthrie. They call her Husk. And she says there are hundreds of mutants that have essentially become kind of, not necessarily mutants, but a resistance force that is hiding out from the Nimrod Sentinels. And of course, she leads them back to basically the guy who has kind of stepped up to lead them. And it's a guy that already knows that they're coming. And this guy, of course, well, happens to be Nick Fury. And he's ready to essentially not lead them, but definitely help them. Because I think that he recognizes maybe a kindred spirit in Kitty. I mean, that's a lot to infer from basically one page, one kind of splash page that has some dialogue in it. But I think that that Fury is ready to kind of cede control of this, admittedly more kind of mutant issue to someone who is a mutant. So I thought that was the right direction to go. I think, obviously, since Brian Wood took over this book, it's been terrific. It's been the things that he's brought to bear in regards to his current run on this book are two things that unfortunately were sadly lacking in Nick Spencer's run. And again, as I watched Ghost Critic in talking about this, is that he just never got into a groove. And that's, of course, the saddest thing here is that, because we know that Nick Spencer is a great writer, but for whatever reason, he just couldn't step up to the plate for this particular title. And Brian Wood has kind of taken some of the ideas, taken the groundwork for what Spencer laid down, and has given it, a tremendous momentum forward, as opposed to just kind of lingering. And from issue to issue, there'd be like an issue of, okay, well, here's like, intense moments of a battle with some good character, and then there's all of these kind of mini kind of introductory issues into other characters in other places. And it was just too fragmented, but Wood is definitely giving this comic a very solid through line. And, he's also, he's amped up, like I said, he's amped up the momentum, and he's really added coherence, much needed coherence to this title. The only complaint that I have about this is that it felt really short. It felt like a really short read. So while being really good and very solid, it just felt a little too brief. So I give it a 4 out of 5 for X-Men Ultimate X-Men 15. Again, a really solid book, but again, it just could have been, there could have been a little bit more. So now we move on to Winter Soldier, number 9, and as we all know the news by now, those who care, is that Ed Brubaker, this was going to be the one book that Ed Brubaker was going to stay on while at Marvel, but ultimately he has made his decision to leave Marvel entirely for the time being, and he may come back. Of course, I'm sure that he'll still be doing work with the Icon imprint, as far as Criminal and maybe more Incognito and what have you. Of course, right now we just have him on Fatale at Image, and that's of course a brilliant enough comic. But moving along here, and it was really sad to hear that Brubaker's going to be leaving this title too, because again, this is it's looking like this unless Jason, I think it's Jason Latour, is the new writer, who I've never heard of, is going to be taking over the title from here. Unless he kind of continues the same kind of gritty, almost kind of set, in this realistic tone, with Brubaker's similar kind of focus and so on and so forth, it might be something that I'm going to end up dropping. Just like Captain America, I can guarantee you I'm going to be dropping as soon as Brubaker's gone. In fact, I'm surprised I haven't dropped it already because the last couple issues have been so awful. But anyway, but that serves as kind of a nice counterpoint to Winter Soldier, because this is Brubaker really showing what he can do within this title. Because this is just, it's another just terrific issue of Winter Soldier, where basically we have, just basically all this waiting while Jasper Sitwell and Bucky try to figure out what is going to be Leo's next move and what has he done with Natasha. Obviously, it's understood that she's been brainwashed. And again, what we have here is Brubaker very smartly, very wisely concentrating on, and fully fleshing out supporting characters and giving them their own moments and giving them these really awesome moments, like Sitwell basically understanding that, that's because Leo is who he is now, he's going to try and do this, that whatever, whatever Natasha's original cover was, he's going to try and get her back to that. And of course, that's being a dancer. So that is how they figure out where she is. And so there's this very intense battle between Sitwell and Bucky and Leo and Natasha as she's performing on stage, and they kind of lead everybody out of the auditorium just so they can basically take care of business on their own. And it's a really brutal fight. One of the things that does kind of leave me a little bit, it kind of confuses me, is that, Bucky has got, a metal kind of super-powered arm. So, and I understand that his natural training will always have him, kind of using both hands, but why doesn't this hand seem to do more damage than it shows? But I mean, that's okay. I mean, that's kind of really being nitpicky, because I mean, when he's beating up on Leo, and basically Natasha's got Sitwell in her sights and is about to kill him, of course it's the choice. Capture me, or basically save Sitwell and save Natasha from doing something that she ultimately will regret once the programming wears off. And of course, Bucky has to make the moral choice here, even if it's not the most pragmatic choice. And finally, we seem to get Natasha back, but of course this is all just the beginning of Leo's game. Because, I mean, what we have here in Leo is that we have a great adversary for Bucky, someone who is literally, his equal in just about every way. He does everything that Bucky would do, but just, of course, in this particular case, he's, Leo's the bad guy, and Bucky's the good guy. So, just using that training and, using his smarts, using his ability to manipulate, it's a fascinating read. Of course, it has this, this great art by Michael Lark, and, who just continues to just crush it with his work on this book. The only thing that keeps this from being like a pick of the week for me for this issue was that the ending was a little bit predictable. I kind of felt, yeah, this is not going to wrap up as neatly and as easily as they would like it, as our heroes would like it, and it's going to get severely messy from here on out. So how this goes down from here, I don't know, but I am really looking forward to seeing how it does progress, because ultimately when Brubaker is finished with this title, which will be, I think, by number 14, we'll have a full wrap-up to this arc, which makes me feel really good, because, of course, they were worried about sales, so we kind of designed it to be self-contained anyway. So just a great issue. Very, very solid 4.5 out of 5 for Winter Soldier number 9. And that brings us to another could-have-been book of the week, and that is Wolverine and the X-Men number 15. So basically, what we have here is that Aaron Jason Aaron very smartly removes removes a lot of the excesses of the AVX tie-ins, and doesn't have just an issue where, okay, well, it's just more of the Avengers and the X-Men beating on each other. No, it's in this particular case, the Jean Grey school has become kind of a safe haven, if you will, from even for students from Utopia, which we see being brought in here. And these are these are like a lot of the characters from Morrison's run. And I don't know what title these guys might exist in other than this. I don't know if like it's X-Men Legacy or just X-Men or whatever. I don't know exactly where they come from. All I know is that people like of course all the Stepford Cuckoos and and Dust, all kind of these Morrison inventions. And I think Armor was in there, of course, which is a Whedon invention. But so we have a lot of just really excellent character moments here, with particularly my favorite of the kind of more entertaining character moments is with Brew, because Brew just the fact that he's in the same room with Tony Stark and Hank McCoy, and he's the one who has the fresh eyes that can be brought to this, and ends up coming up with a different solution. And just, again, these wonderful character moments that Aaron builds for Brew. And then we have, these great character moments between Bobby and Kitty, and how their kind of romance is blooming. Because, Colossus is definitely out of the picture at this point in time. We have a really nice another really nice romantic interlude between Toad and Paige, and that was just, it was very unusual, but that she actually she kind of tears off her human flesh in order to kind of be more of what Toad is sees as his kind of romantic ideal of her, rather than what would be our romantic ideal of her, which is, of course, with her flesh on. So it's a really, really cool and very smart and very sweet moment, actually. So, and then we have what I think was just a brilliant moment between Wolverine and Bobby, where Logan basically tells him, look, I didn't hire you, I didn't bring you onto this school because you were going to say yes to me all the time. I brought you here because you're going to disagree with me a lot. So I don't mind that you, kind of went to the, kind of the dark side for a little while. But happy to have you back on the team. And they have, a drink of whatever kind of alcohol it is. And then, Bobby literally says, I don't, it's like, I don't understand why, while he's going on kind of this laundry list of other things that are potentially are critical of Logan. It's like, you make me drink stuff that puts holes in my stomach. And then the artist whose name I forget, sadly it's not Nick Bradshaw or Chris Bachalo, but it's another kind of stand-in artist for the time being. And he literally shows Bobby with small holes in his stomach, in the ice, around his stomach. So I just thought it was really clever. It was just really, really well done. And and then you have Idie and Hope, talking. Idie, of course, being very religious and saying that she prays for Hope and everything like that. And they kind of discuss their own kind of, well, at least Idie's kind of possible romantic life, that she seems to be kind of interested in Brew. So I mean, it's just mostly because Brew is just a really, really sweet guy, despite the fact that he is Brood. But what made the biggest impression to me on this issue is actually its sadder character moments. which we have this great moment, which is basically Gladiator is forcing Kid Gladiator to go back with him to the Shire Empire, and basically as his ruler and as his father, and you won't disobey me. And we also have an excellent moment with Warbird, where because Kid Gladiator, despite himself, he actually has enjoyed his time on Earth, despite how he talks about hating it there and everything like that. He has enjoyed it. He's enjoyed making friends. So when he kind of has to say his goodbyes, it's of course in a very typical Kid Gladiator way, but in a very atypical Kid Gladiator way as well. And then we have basically Warbird not being cast out by Gladiator by saying, there's nowhere to you should not come with me because you can actually do better here. So it's almost kind of leaving her without a purpose, without a master. And I thought, just there's one moment where she's just kind of looking up at the ship as it's departing, and you feel that she is now very much alone. And then, of course, we have these moments where Quentin Quires being a total dick to both Rachel and Professor Xavier, and Xavier is basically telling him, there's more to you than just what you're doing. So it's time to wise up. It's time to grow up, essentially. Again, but the best character moment of them all happens at the very end where basically the team is about to head off and start to essentially again become embroiled in the conflict, and Hank looks off down the wall, and there is a framed photo of the 5 original X-Men in their original uniforms and everything like that, and he just kind of regards it for a moment, because he understands that essentially that the leader of them, the best of them, and probably his best, one of his best friends, is the villain now. And he's having obviously a really hard time coming to terms with the fact that he actually is going to go off essentially to war against one of his very best friends and one of his oldest friends. But it was just, all in all, a really just great issue. The only thing that did turn me off is I was not a huge fan of the art here. I really, really missed Nick Bradshaw and Chris Bachalo, or Chris Bachalo. I think that they would have serviced this issue a lot better. But I understand, they want to make the deadlines. Sometimes that ultimately results in having to bring in a guest artist. So, but just really kudos to this book for really staying on target. When especially when the Avengers vs. X-Men actual title is missing like all of the targets. So just great stuff for this issue. Absolute 4.5 out of 5 for Wolverine the X-Men number 15. Now this is next one we're going to talk about is an issue that I normally wouldn't even bring up because it's not a title that I collect, but it's something that I read at the store and thought it was, because somebody recommended that I pick it up, and I said, well, I don't really have the money for this, I'll just read it, because my shop's really cool that way. And it was Avenging Spider-Man number 11. Because basically what this is, kind of fitting in with the 50th anniversary, whole kind of thing with that, is that, Zeb Wells crafts a non-team-up issue, unless you consider Peter and Aunt May teaming up to be a team-up, but no. It's very much they go to visit Uncle Ben's grave. And basically, Peter kind of leads off with, it was my fault. And, Aunt May, what's become actually so great about Aunt May in the more kind of modern era is that she's not the frail old woman that she used to be. I'm not even talking about, like, this is even, with you know, some of the stuff that, you know, just, you know, her, of course, discovering Peter's secret identity after all of these years, you know, however long ago that was, and whoever actually did it. I don't remember who was actually the writer who did it. I don't know if it was Straczynski or Wade or whatever. But basically, you know, we have a very, very, very solid, beautifully written story about basically, you know, these moments of their lives that have been affected one way or the other by Uncle Ben, and, you know, that, you know, Aunt May, she's not the frail old lady where, you know, Peter can't tell her about his secret identity because she's so afraid that she'll just drop dead of shock. And I'm glad that they've tossed that aside, that it basically almost Aunt May has actually almost become like younger as the years have gone on, because when we were first introduced to her, I mean, you know, we had this kind of ideal of the, you know, the wonderful motherly, you know, but frail old woman, and she is not that anymore. And of course, you know, she even talks about Jay a little bit, you know, while they're at the graveside, and, you know, Peter's kind of like slamming on the brakes there. It's like, I don't need to know anymore. I really don't. But it's just, I mean, it's just a really wonderful issue. The only thing that kills it is the art by Steve Dillon. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it a million more times until somebody at Marvel maybe starts listening, is that Steve Dillon is not a good superhero artist, okay? He can do stuff on, you know, he was really good working with Ennis on Punisher, you know, because he didn't have to do really any superhero stuff. Obviously, it was brilliant working with Ennis on, you know, titles like Hellblazer and especially Preacher, but, you know, he's just not, you know, I remember seeing his superhero work for the first time. I think it was the first Ultimates annual, and it was I do not think it was written by MANOWAR, but it was just like, this looks like crap. And then, of course, MANOWAR brought him back for Ultimate Avengers 2, or whatever the hell it was, where Blade was, you know, he was, you know, and then all the Ultimates became vampires and everything. That whole kind of silliness that went on there. But he's just not a good guy to be doing superhero comics. I mean, he, you know, and his style is very kind of drab. It's too kind of faux realistic, you know, for a title like Spider-Man. I mean, even just when he's recounting, when they're kind of going through some flashbacks, recounting certain moments in Spider-Man's life, and just, you know, kind of the opening as, you know, Spider-Man goes up against Copperhead very, very briefly. It's just, you know, it just doesn't work. And the art, and his art just kind of messes this up, especially he's, you know, whoever was inking this issue also has a great deal of blame too, because, you know, it seems like they really tried to make it kind of as generic Steve Dillon looking as possible. So I don't know, but as Zeb Wells tells it, though, it's a beautifully written story, and a, you know, terrific character issue, and very much in keeping with the 50th anniversary kind of vibe. And so it's a very solid 4 out of 5 for Avenging Spider-Man number 11. So now on to the independents. I'm going to start with Manowar number 4. This is, you know, again, I keep saying this, you know, the whole kind of relaunch of Valiant has been a huge surprise to me. I thought it was just going to be more kind of rehashed 90s garbage. But this is actually really smartly told. I mean, all the issues that I've read so far have been, you know, really engrossing. They really pull you in. They really get good momentum going right out of the gate, so that you don't feel totally and utterly lost. And so with Manowar, which has been kind of my favorite of the new Valiant, you know, comics that they've come, or the relaunch of the Valiant comics, basically we have, you know, this opening where kind of the higher ups, like Commander Trill and you know, kind of the High Priest and the, you know, and the Admiral are all kind of arguing about how best to deal with the theft of Eric's theft of the Shinhara MANOWAR armor, and you know, they don't really, you know, there's obviously conflicting ideologies here, you know, from a you know, from a standpoint of kind of more pragmatism, a standpoint of faith, and a, you know, standpoint of just might. And so I mean, that was just a really interesting kind of opening to this issue, considering the huge bomb that we had dropped on us in the previous issue, is that Eric apparently has been either aboard the ship or something in space for 16 centuries. He is now in the present when he arrives back on Earth for the first time, and he is ready to do war with Rome once again. But now this time he's got the MANOWAR armor, and he's ready to just majorly kick ass. And he's met, of course, by all of these kind of modern soldiers with modern equipment, modern armament. And he still makes pretty short work of them. And you know, they even send in, you know, Typhoon fighter bombers to kind of blow him out of the sky. But he, you know, of course, he's immune, and you know, his armor starts to develop certain, it starts to adapt to his environment. Like, for instance, you know, I mean, you know, he's actually on he's actually on everybody's, you know, the one of the jet's radar, because he's just destroyed one. So the other one, they try to get him in a missile lock, but the suit kind of goes stealth. It all of a sudden, like, it really hardens and becomes like invisible other than to the naked eye. And of course, he then, you know, he yanks the pilot out of the plane, and you know, the pilot basically tells him, look, Rome, I don't know what you're doing here, but Rome hasn't been at war with the Visigoths in, you know, in hundreds of years. You know, Visigoths don't even exist anymore. And this basically prompts him to get the fuck out of Dodge in a quick hurry, because he obviously needs to deal with this in his head, because, you know, of course, there's still the mystery of his wife, what happened to her, and of course, you know, deal with, you know, some greater issues here, but we don't see that in this issue, because ultimately we're introduced to some new players on the board, and when this new player is introduced, we see him, you know, living this very, very extravagant, and one might say, you know, a very, very decadent lifestyle. But he is maybe not quite human, and may very well be one of, you know, he is one of the Vine, but he seems to have taken human form. So whether or not this is actually the kind of the aftermath of, you know, because they did, you know, in the first issue, if you remember, they were snatching children and replacing them with, you know, kind of these these analogs, you know, these clones, if you will, and so, you know, this might very well be the result of those children, that because they ultimately can speak kind of telepathically with all of the other Vine that are not only on our planet but also in space, and basically they need to deal with you know, the MANOWAR, you know, the Shinhara armor being on Earth now in the present, and the stakes start to grow even higher once, you know, some of their plans start to become revealed in this issue. So I mean, you know, Robert Venditti and you know, Carrie Nord have really gotten a hold of me. They, you know, this title has grabbed me by the nuts, and it is not letting go. And it's normally would not be a pleasant feeling, but it is one of those things where it's like, okay, lead me wherever you need to take me, because I am totally on board here. I am glad to be on this ride with you guys. So Exo MANOWAR, just keeping the, you know, ramping up the, you know, keeping up the momentum, ramping up the suspense, ramping up the story, ramping up the stakes, and ultimately creating a really, really terrific comic. So this was a very, very easy 4.5 out of 5 for Exo MANOWAR #4. Just a terrific issue. And then what I consider to be the not necessarily the worst book of, I'll call it the worst book of the week, because it's a huge disappointment, and that is Steed and Mrs. Peel #0. Now, previously we had Grant Morrison for Boom Comics was writing Steed and Mrs. Peel, and I didn't care about any of that because I don't care about Grant Morrison's writing right now, until somebody really suggests that I should be reading Morrison's stuff, because I hate Batman Inc. I hated what he was doing with Batman. I just don't have any more patience for his wacko, hallucinatory, like mescaline-induced, narratives anymore. I just don't have it. It's lost on me. But what we have here is we have Mark Waid, who is now writing this book, and starts it with a new #0. And now this is, Steed and Mrs. Peel, of course, being the Avengers of the old 60s British spy TV show. Now, I'm going to admit something to you that I would very rarely admit to anybody else. And since, essentially anybody in the world could watch this, I guess I'm admitting it to everybody potentially, is that I'm not a huge fan. I'm a very I'm aware of the original show's existence. I was aware of John Steed and Emma Peel, a long time ago, and I admire kind of the the work that they did during that time, because to me, of that era, the best television show, and certainly one of the best television shows of all time, but my favorite television show of that era was The Prisoner. So I understand kind of the the mod, kind of almost ludicrous and silly vibe that this was taking. I mean, The Prisoner was a distinctly different show, and I think I've owned it in all of its incarnations, both on VHS, on DVD, and now I have them all on Blu-ray. So because it's just that awesome of a series. But now we have and so I knew about the Avengers. I'd seen some of the old episodes, and again, I haven't gotten to my big confession yet. My big confession is I actually really enjoy the Avengers film that was with Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman and Sean Connery, despite the fact that it is kind of almost universally reviled. I actually really enjoy it. I think it's really strange and weird and cool and fun, and I just love Ralph Fiennes. So I mean, that was, to me, it was just really neat, and I think it definitely kind of kept the vibe of that series of what I had seen going. But it's just neat to kind of see Ralph Fiennes in the role of John Steed. It was something that I actually emulated for quite some time. I used to wear like 3-piece suits to work with a with a pocket watch and everything like that. It was like, to me, it was like the epitome of cool, much cooler than like even James Bond was, because it had this old style sensibility to it. It even had a derby hat. I don't have it anymore. So don't ask me to pull it out or anything like that. But this was just, to me, this was, at least in recent memory, easily the most inaccessible thing that Mark Waid has ever written. Because this is for Avengers fans only. Because basically what we have here is we have the because back in, I'm going on much longer about this than I want to, but the whole kind of draw to this for me, other than it being Mark Waid, was that I was unaware that the idea of the Hellfire Club, which exists in, of course, has existed throughout X-Men, lore for many, many, many years, was actually originally an idea that was conceived and was brought about with, the Hellfire Club was actually first introduced in an episode of the Avengers. And I kind of was hoping that this book would just ultimately be more, like, okay, I could just, without knowing too much about the Avengers, I could just kind of jump in, read it, and enjoy it. But no. And also the art, and I don't remember who did the art, but the art is really not good. So I mean, to me, while it did still, on some level, I was kind of entertained by certain moments of it, more than anything, because I have really no knowledge of the show as a whole. I don't really know these characters as well as I should, or maybe would even like to, but it just didn't, it did nothing for me, really. So this was just, it was not a comic that was made for me. So I will admit that while fans of the old TV show will probably greatly enjoy this, it was not something that was I was not the target audience for this book. So to me, it was a 2 out of 5 at best, really. But moving on, going on to DC, and we have Aquaman number 12. So here, basically, and I've been, saying this for a while now. This is the best work. This is the best work that Geoff Johns is currently doing in the DC universe, and that, to me, is almost an undisputed fact. Because Justice League is very cookie cutter. Green Lantern, to me, had been extremely boring, even when I tried to kind of pick it up and get with it again. And it's like, I feel that Johns has kind of overstated his welcome there. I've heard good things about the annual, but again, to me, it's just something I just don't give a shit about. Because just from the first issue, it felt like, and from subsequent issues, it just felt like Johns was he was really phoning it in with this character. And, okay, yeah, let's make Sinestro Green Lantern again. And just, the fact that it still exists within continuity of the original, of the New 52 not being kind of a restart for anything. And I know that Batman has basically kind of done the same thing, but every other comic book has made significant changes, Batman being one of them as well. I mean, there's a lot of the past that has basically been excised from the memory of Batman, and of course the biggest example being Stephanie Brown. But now it looks like another one. Tim Drake is about to be excised from that history as well. But again, the whole idea of Green Lantern actually staying within, okay, we are continuing from where we left off. There's not going to be any breaks. It might as well not even have been a #1 issue of the New 52. It should almost. I almost feel that DC Comics should just almost change its name to Geoff Johns Comics, because it's like, it's his world, it's his sandbox, and he's going to play with whatever he wants to. But Aquaman has become, of course, kind of his pet project, because Aquaman, for obviously a number of years now, has just not gotten any respect, really. And, has always been kind of, okay, well, he's the guy that can talk to fish. So while I do think that certain elements of Aquaman have made an overcorrection in making him really dark and badass and everything like that, for the most part, the actual storytelling has been that of the Geoff Johns that I remember, which is that of somebody who has who knows how to put in really smart action beats. He can bring the big action. He can bring in these nice character moments, and he really kind of has his eye on the ball with Aquaman. So, and that's because that's what he does, is ultimately he works to kind of resurrect characters from being too boring or too dull or too old. Because that's obviously what he did with Green Lantern, what he tried to do with Barry Allen, and ultimately I think Francis Manapul is doing a much better job than Geoff Johns ever did. Look at Flash Rebirth, you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically what we have here is that it's basically the others and Aquaman and Mera versus Black Manta in kind of an epic throwdown. Of course, this isn't the finale, but it does lay this groundwork for what's going to be coming next. Because, basically this whole, everything with Dr. Shin and, all of the others and Mera and Aquaman, that basically that Arthur has been hiding parts of himself that he did not want to be tied to anymore. He didn't want to be this guy anymore. But of course, meeting with Black Manta again and being brought out, by Black Manta because of his murder of some of the members of the others, his murders of some of the members of the others, that's kind of forced him to go back to his kind of previous ways of, you and I, Black Manta, you and I have got a serious problem, and I'm going to fuck you up. I'm going to kill you. I mean, basically, it's just that simple. There's nothing is going to stop me, despite even this scepter that Black Manta gets a hold of in this particular issue, with not the help of Dr. Shin, but certainly not. He doesn't help Aquaman either. But we do have ultimately a sacrifice of one of the others, and we have the declaration on the final page, that of Arthur saying Black Manta dies now. So it's basically it is at times, I think it's overly brutal. Again, that's the only kind of complaint that I might have about this issue and about Aquaman in general since the others have arrived, because this is really, but then it's fitting with with what he was when he was a member of the others, and basically how he is around Black Manta, and because he has a lot to answer for. So it's just and of course Ivan Reis art, just just gorgeous, beautifully rendered stuff. And it doesn't take any prisoners, this book, despite the fact that there is, of course, a character called the Prisoner. That wasn't really a pun. It was just it's just a really terrific book. Really glad that that I'm seeing Jeff Johns doing really solid work within the DC universe right now. So this is absolutely a 4.5 out of 5. Again, almost a pick of the week, but just not quite. So 4.5 out of 5 for Aquaman number 12. National Comics Looker number 1. This was just something I kind of read on a lark because I was familiar with the character of Looker from before the New 52. I knew she was one of the members of Batman's Outsiders during the and even during the Detective Comics Alan Grant, Norm Breyfogle years. She was actually kind of a supporting character, and she had these. I don't remember exactly what her power set was, but here she's a vampire. She's her real name is Emily Briggs. She's a former supermodel until she, of course, was turned into a vampire, and now she runs a supermodeling agency, and two of her one of her models was killed, the other is missing. And some terrible things apparently have happened to the body. She kind of misses being a model, but it's definitely kind of keeping her a finger on the pulse of what's going on. And the reasons that she gives for not being a model anymore, that she has like lupus or something like that. So just the stress of it, so on and so forth. So she just sticks to managing them. And of course, she can't be photographed, which is essentially why. So this is more of a book that sticks to that kind of old, to that bad penny that always seems to turn up when it comes to vampires. And it's her ultimately, of course, another vampire, or it's actually it's not a vampire, but it doesn't really matter. It's a monster. She kills it, saves the day. Meh. You know, it's just, it is very much like, how the fuck did a Z-list character like Looker somehow in the minds of, you know, Dan Didio and everybody else, you know, Ian Edgington, who wrote this, how did it come to their minds that, yeah, this will be a good character to bring back before we see, I don't know, characters like Black Bats, or even Spoiler, or Catman, you know, people that were, you know, these much cooler characters and much better characters. I guess the only logic that I can see is that Looker literally has nothing to do with anybody, and this is just a one-shot. I don't know if National Comics is going to keep kind of doing this, but if they do, let's hope that they do try and introduce someone of actual value into this new 52. So this it looked really nice. The art in it's really good. So it looked pretty. It you know, it had some semi-interesting moments. It was a 2 out of 5 at best. Before Watchmen, Minutemen, number 3. This was a really interesting title this week, because it really was like a total 180 from the second issue, which was just like too much, too freaky, too creepy, too perverse. And, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, again, the whole revelation that Hooded Justice and Captain Metropolis are gay is somehow perverse, but I mean, like, the kind of kinky shit that they were doing was, like, too much. You know, Darwin Cook seemed to really get kink confused with being provocative. So while this kind of returns to the form of more of the first issue, which was terrific, where basically this takes place directly after the events of, not directly, but I mean pretty much directly after the events that we do actually see play out in Watchmen of Eddie, of the comedian assaulting Sally Jupiter. So it was just, you know, basically they decide, you know, all of them, you know, with the exception of Silhouette and Sally, who are not there, all the other men vote him out. And comedian kind of has his, you know, he kind of, you know, calls them a bunch of hypocrites, calls them a bunch of fags, again, you know, just being as foul and crude as he possibly could be, and then he splits. And then what Darwin Cook is doing here within this issue, I thought was also really interesting and a really cool choice, which is to juxtapose images of these kind of behind-the-scenes tales of the Minutemen with kind of this golden age these kind of golden age comic illustrations of the Minutemen as they're presented in their own comic book. And of course, you know, we're still definitely following the story here of Hollis Mason as he's looking to publish Under the Hood, but what we get here is actually even better, because by far the two most interesting characters in this book are Night Owl and the Silhouette. And that's that, you know, the Silhouette has a very specific mission, and her mission is to save children, and to punish those who would harm them. And so this issue very smartly follows the two of them, and more specifically Silhouette herself is more of kind of the centerpiece of this issue, even more so than Hollis Mason is. That, you know, we're kind of introduced to the fact that yes, she is gay, that you know, that she finds herself in this very bad way, in this kind of very haunting visage of this girl that she's trying to save, and just everything goes all wrong, you know, even for her, and it's a very kind of what's the best? I can't even really think of a word to summarize this book. It's not heavy-handed. The way that Cook really orchestrates stuff in this issue is terrific. I just wish that they'd actually spent kind of more time with with Hollis and the Silhouette, and kind of, but we do realize, this is a world now at war. The comedians, being basically, drafted by the feds, to kind of be like a spy smasher, and because it begins in 1940, but then it kind of later leaps to 1942. So we've had Pearl Harbor, we see the comedian fighting, a bunch of Japs, but ultimately the real centerpiece here, like I said, being the Silhouette. This is a very kind of heartbreaking issue, because ultimately we know the Silhouette's fate. We know all of their fates, really, but hers is the most effective of all of them, because she is not... She's kind of the most pure. She's the one that has the most specific and purest intentions, other than Hollis, and which is why I think it's wise for Cook to follow these two characters. So, of course, his art is just fantastic. So, this is a really smart issue. It does kind of miss the mark, because it does kind of lose its focus a little bit, and gets a little bit, it gets a little bit too disjointed at times. But this was a very, very solid 4, kind of edging more towards 4.5 out of 5 for Before Watchmen Minutemen number 3. Flash Annual number 1. Now, those of you who've been watching, of course, know that I was a huge fan of Flash issue 12. Thought it was just fantastic. And this is, aside from most annuals that you get, they're kind of a separate entity from the main storyline. This does actually get to a point after we get some more kind of introductory, kind of almost flashbacky stories, that we get to a point that is a continuation of the previous issue. But we have a whole host of artists here. And it's that which is basically this book's biggest problem. Despite the fact that it has artists like Scott Kolins and Diogenes Neves, and even Marcus Toe, who did a decent job filling in for Manipul when he was basically he was just writing and not doing any art. Basically, we have, just like I said, some moments with the Flash, kind of trying to figure out what the hell Dr. Elias was doing. Why Dr. Elias chose to kind of betray him like this. And then we see the Rogues, and how they, how the Rogues themselves became powered up, with the exception of Trickster. Is that basically, they have their rules. They have their 3 rules. Don't kill anybody. Only really do the scores that that you can pull off. And there's I know that the 3rd rule, kind of famously in kind of the Rogue's Revenge Final Crisis arc, was that never, or actually I think after that, was never to kill a speedster. But I know that 3rd issue is actually a little bit different here. Or that 3rd rule is a little bit different here, but I don't remember what it is. Anyway, point being is that we see that it's actually how Captain Cold doesn't need a gun anymore. Heatwave doesn't need a gun. Mirror Master doesn't really need his gun, and even Weather Wizard doesn't need his little weather wand. And how they have these actual extra normal metahuman abilities, and it's all thanks to Dr. Darwin Elias. He was the one that's actually helped them to engineer their powers. And of course, this is also the origin of how Glider came to be, because of course Glider being Len's sister, and she was actually in love with Sam Scudder, you know, with Mirror Master. That's why she kind of hung around with the Rogues, and that's how, you know, this whole kind of this machine that gives them the powers, it explodes, and ultimately it, Len's sister becomes essentially a living astral projection of herself. She has no place inside of her own body, and so that's basically, we get the, you know, like I said, the origin story there. So I mean, we get to see kind of the family dynamic amongst the Rogues as well, and that, yes, that you know, Captain Cold can be a colossal fuck up from time to time. Most of the time, actually, because I mean, he's constantly getting schooled by Flash. I mean, all of them are constantly getting schooled by Flash. But we do have, you know, once we get past kind of these flashbacks, we are thrust into this, you know, this new, you know, into this continuation of the previous issue, where Dr. Elias is basically, is kind of, you know, he could possibly die here, but, you know, Captain Cold basically makes him an offer, you know, I will fight with you against the Rogues. In which case, you know, Flash uses all of his not, you know, not inconsiderable powers. They are very, very considerable, and definitely formidable against the Rogues, as they always are, even in their amped up state. And of course, there is the curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal moment with Captain Cold. But this just leads to a real shocker of a finale, is that an even bigger threat has come to Central City. And some talking monkeys. Big monkeys. So that was like, that was the face that I made when I read the final page of this. Again, Francis Manapul doesn't do any art here except for some breakdowns that are eventually worked on by other people. So none of it has his kind of coherent and gorgeous artwork. Again, the moments by Scott Collins, the moments by Diogenes Neves are fantastic, because Diogenes Neves is one of those artists that I don't think is really getting his due, because he's on Demon Knights, which is a book that I really, really enjoy, but I don't think a lot of other people are buying it. So I'm hoping that's not the case. I really need to look at the sales figures one of these days to find out what books might be on the cusp of becoming, you know, the new cast-offs of like the fourth wave of New 52. So I'm just praying that one of them isn't, you know, a book like I, Vampire, which ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, does not sell particularly well. This was 4 out of 5, very solid 4 out of 5. If for nothing else, I mean, the story is really good, and the the action beats are handled really well. The character beats are handled really well. It's just the art is so disjointed when you have so many different artists working together. Now, on to the picks of the week. So those of you, again, if you know me, you know probably what's coming here, because we have 2 books that I've yet to talk about that I do collect. And the first one of those, this was a hard week for me to make my final decision, but as sometimes it is. And those are the weeks that, again, as I've said probably a million times before, that I'm the most excited for, is when there are some books that are just so good, it's really hard to choose the best. But I will start off with the runner-up, as I normally do, and that is American Vampire number 30. Wow. Just wow. I really, really did not see that coming. Because basically, as you know, as we have it, we have, you know, I know that there's, you know, the whole big thing in comic news this week was the big kiss between Superman and Wonder Woman, but believe me, something far more dramatic in a non-platonic manner happens in this book. Because basically we have the original moment where Henry proposes to Pearl in 1929, and does it by actually recording one of his own songs. And he writes a new song, and it's about Pearl. And that's and that's how he proposes to her, by playing this what he says is an old record, and it's a record that they keep referencing throughout the issue, as Henry, of course, is kind of wasting away in this this bed back at the VMS headquarters, Pearl just kind of wants to get out of there, and of course she kind of jokes around about that she loves the fact that she wrote the song for him, but he does have a terrible, awful voice. His guitar playing is awesome, but his voice is just terrible. But basically, it's time for both her and Skinner to get back to work, ferreting out the undeads under beds, as this blacklist arc continues. And they meet up with a guy who used to be a rum runner, who actually has a mounted machine gun with gold bullets, because he knows this is what harms the American species of Homo abominus, or whatever exactly the term is that they use. Or Homo abominum, whatever. Again, doesn't matter. Vampires. Skinner and Pearl go to work on them, and this is, of course, where we have a reference to the Old West, and then we have that some cool references to the Old West, because that is ultimately where Skinner Sweet became a vampire. So he's been around a lot longer than Pearl has. Just a line that he has where where Pearl says something like, "Who do you think you are, Jesse James?" And Skinner just kind of scoffs, just like, Jesse was a pussy. The big fight, the big melee happens, and then Pearl is she's been injured. She's just feeling drained. Not only physically but emotionally, and she's kind of feeding off of Skinner, and that ultimately becomes something much different. This is just another one of the many examples that Scott Snyder is one of the very best, if not the best, writer in the business right now. He weaves such tremendous magic with pretty much all of his books. And while some issues of American Vampire sometimes aren't up to snuff, they'll because this is, sometimes it just gets a little bit off track, especially when Rafael Albuquerque is not doing the art. That does, I think, hurt it. But for God's sake, I shouldn't say hurt it necessarily, because of course, Sean Murphy and Dustin, Sean Murphy doing Survival of the Fittest, and of course, Dustin Nguyen doing, the amazing job that he's doing right now on Lord of Nightmares. So, I'm not saying that when other artists step in, it's automatically bad. I'm just saying that when it's someone other than these names, it does tend to drop off a little bit in readability and quality. So may Rafael Albuquerque never leave this book again, and may Scott Snyder, if he does, the only way that he can leave it is if he ends it. But this is one of those books I want to stay around for a really long time, because it is just phenomenal. So an absolute solid 5 out of 5 for American Vampire number 30. Which brings me to, of course, Pick of the Week, and this usually is Pick of the Week whenever it does come out. It's become almost it's become almost a default status for this comic, usually because it's so fucking good. Although it wasn't last issue with the previous issue, but it definitely is with this one, and that is, of course, Morning Glories number 21. We have the Truants, as they are referred to, not in any official capacity. It's just this is what they are called in this new arc here. That basically we have these 6 other kind of undercover students at MGA, and which are, one of them we've already met, which is Guillaume, which is Jun's his boyfriend. And then we have Vanessa, we have Fortunato, we have Kiko, we have Ian, and we have Irina. So there are not obvious parallels, and these are not necessarily total analogs of the introductions of the previous characters, but they are. Because basically this whole issue begins with the final moments of, I think, issue 18, which is when Zoe has her fucking heart blown out, and we discover who is behind it. And of course, this character of Irina is the one that shot her, just as she was about to kill Hunter. And just in the moments where we have kind of these introductions to these characters, because these are all from Father Abraham's kind of paramilitary academy, if you will. These are the, again, if we were to put a parallel on it, to the show Lost, these, the MGA staff are kind of the others, and then these are like the third wave. If you watch Lost, you know what I'm talking about. People like Michelle Rodriguez's character, and so on and so forth. People that were brought on to the show that weren't the others, but they were the others. These were like the good guy others as opposed to the bad guy others. And that's who these characters are. Well, at least we think so, because we don't really know for sure what the fuck is happening here. Because the character that really gets the most kind of face time in this issue is the character of Irina. Is that we see that she is definitely someone not to be trifled with. I mean, that's obviously clear from the fact that she just killed, that she had just killed Zoe, but she shoots Hunter as he's running away. It's just a graze, but for a while we do think, did Hunter just get killed? Because if that happened, I'm going to be really pissed off, because his is definitely one of the most interesting stories of our 6 lead characters, which is now down to 5. But we have, Ian is kind of an analog, if you will, for Ike. He's definitely the most cynical, the most, but he has a more kind of it's more of a it's not quite the anarchic, just almost hatred that Ike has. But Ian has definitely just a terrific amount of snark to him. And of course, we have, Irina is kind of the Casey here. Is that she, basically is introduced in much the same way as Casey was introduced in the very first issue of Morning Glories into the Academy, where she's taken downstairs by someone that she flashes the quote-unquote doomy eyes at, as Kiko had pointed out, and she sees these two basically what she sees are supposed to be her parents, you know, and their throats are slit and they're chained and everything like that. And she just starts, it starts to look like she's sobbing, but she's actually laughing. And these people are not her real parents. So basically, you know, they've kind of gone on this fool's errand, and she is there to basically burn the fucker to the ground. But whatever this is going to take, because they do speak of a sacrifice, it has something to do with Jun and his brother. Now, the other great thing about this particular issue is the fact that we have a character that is ready to say, what the fuck are you guys talking about? But not directly to them, these new, you know, the truants, as we call them, but to Jun, which is, you know, he's, you know, as they keep talking about these different things, like, wait, what tower, what plant, you know, he just keeps saying, you know, it's just very kind of sotto voce, you know, what is this, what is that, what are you talking, you know, and he's kind of losing his shit here, because, I mean, he's just, you know, I mean, Maggie's been killed, you know, this girl that, you know, was basically like almost his female analog, if you will, and Zoe's just been, you know, Zoe was about to kill him, has just been shot dead before his eyes, and what the fuck is going on? To just have a character, while all of this crazy shit is happening, to be actually there commenting on the fact that I don't know what's happening, and I wish somebody would tell me, but obviously everybody's a little bit too busy to tell me. So, I mean, that to me was just a wonderful moment, and just so precise in Nick Spencer's characterizations, you know, that we have these new characters that we haven't, you know, and here's one of the things I thought would be a problem with this, because I knew this was going to be introducing, I knew this issue was going to be introducing these new characters, these 6 new characters, and okay, so we are now expanding the universe of Morning Glories even further, and that, for a lesser comic and for a lesser writer and artist, would have been the wrong move to make. You would feel that they would want to keep Morning Glories very claustrophobic, keep it very segmented, keep it in its own tiny little, okay, well, here's the students, here's the staff, here's all the crazy shit that happens around them, and that's it. And they would want to just kind of keep it that way. But again, that is a trap that a lesser writer, or, you know, a lesser artist, or a lesser creative team would fall into. But no, not for these guys. They are more than willing to expand the universe, but not to a sense of overdoing it. And that's where I was, you know, I was kind of nervous, but I knew that I shouldn't have been nervous at all. Because, you know, Nick Spencer, Joe Eisman, they do such a tremendous job on this book week after week after week, after month after month after month. You know what I'm talking about. And it's just, this is still Image's best title right now. You know, say what you will about The Walking Dead, which I love. Say what you will about Fatale, which I also love. Say what you will about the Manhattan Projects. Again, I love these books. But this is, it's not blowing them away, but it's definitely of a higher caliber than these other books, despite how much I may love them. So, absolutely perfect 5 out of 5 for, and I don't talk about Joe Eisman's art nearly as much as I should have, but I just love it. I love it so much. That is it for this week of New Comics, bitches! So, I'm sure that I'll be back at some point during this week, because last week was kind of crazy for me, because I had some days off that I want to spend with my wife, and just some other various things going on. And I wanted to, because as I suggested last week, let's hear some, let's hear from you viewers out there. see what kind of topic videos you might want me to do. I'm going to do some of them this week. Don't expect them to be short, or at least they won't be as long as these, but they won't be short either, because it's me. You know me. You know I like to go on for a long time, because I don't like... Other people do it really well. You can summarize your feelings and opinions and thoughts and you know, summarize the comic in just a couple of sentences and move on. I cannot do that. It is in my nature to give a more, I won't say thoughtful, but a more in-depth explanation of how I feel about the comics, what they make me think, what they make me feel, how I feel that they're constructed. So, again, not to dump on anybody else who's out there. All you guys who do your weekly reviews, you're all doing fantastic jobs. I wish that I had the same kind of abilities as you guys do to make these shorter, sweeter, and ultimately maybe a little bit more palatable. So, because only you hardcore viewers continue to watch me, and you know, this is not about me really trying to get my message out to all sorts of people now. If you come by, you know what, I'm happy. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe if you like what you've seen. If you don't like it, thumb it down. Let me know I'm not doing such a great job. I'm not planning on changing the format. I'm not planning on going any, you know, shorter or anything like that. I like where I am. I like what I'm doing. I like the fact that you guys, my fans, the people that I can have real dialogues with, you guys watch it, you guys like it, you guys appreciate it, and you guys get off on it. So that, if it's just, like I said, if it's 9 or 10 people, I know that, you know, the view counter that I have on this is obviously, you know, inaccurate, because you're probably watching, you know, this in like 2 or 3 parts, and I don't fucking blame you. This is long stuff. So, again, thank you guys so much for keeping with me. You know, like I said, please subscribe if you're new here, if you like what you've seen, and like I said, if you don't, thumb it down. Let me know what you would think might improve this. And obviously, even if you're still here, you let me know. My subscribers, the people who do comment, the people who do come by, all you guys, Mark, Damien, all you guys, just let me know. Again, what you're thinking. I'm not planning on changing, but obviously I am always willing to take criticism. And some of you guys owe me. You don't owe me anything. So, but I wouldn't mind saying, for those of you who I did send my original, at least to my mind, properly formatted script of my original comic, not Batman the Unknown. It's not something that's out on my Tumblr page. So if you would like to see it, you would want to send me a direct message with your email, and I'll be happy to send it to you. But I wouldn't mind seeing a review video. At least email me and let me know what you've thought about it. And you know, because if there's one thing that I obviously have learned, that I've learned a great deal from your review videos of Batman the Unknown, is that there's definitely work to be done on that. As much as you did like it, you did think that there were things that were problematic and that I could change. And I do want to, of course, take all of that into the proper context. So thank you all again for doing that. And if you do decide to, for those of you who I have sent it to, if you do decide to do a video review, or just write to me and let me know what you thought about it, again, it would thrill me beyond belief. So I'll get to your viewer suggestions probably a little bit later on this week. Definitely not Friday. I'm going to see Raiders of the Lost Ark in IMAX. Best movie ever made. So until then, I'm James Donnelly. This has been the Shadow Gallery. I'm signing off. I forgot to turn on the backlight tonight because I just wanted to do this. So I apologize if the lighting seems a little bit off in this one, but you'll deal. Okay, because that's the kind of guys you are, and gals. Are there any females out there that do watch this video? That'd be nice to know too. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. comment, criticize, complain, thumb it up, thumb it down, subscribe, don't subscribe. Just let me know you were here. And until next week, always remember to stay in the shadows.